Hey there, welcome to the Thriving in Wellness podcast with Haley and Caitlin. This podcast is for women who are tired of just surviving and ready to truly thrive. It's time to reclaim your health and build trust in your body.
Join us as we myth-bust nutrition topics, tackle your mindset, and dive into the nerdy side of women's health. Just a reminder that this is meant for educational purposes only and is not meant to be used for medical diagnosis or treatment. Now let's jump in. Hello, and welcome back to the Thriving in Wellness podcast. We are so happy to have you here today. Today we're going to be talking about different tracking apps and like wearables, like the watches and things, and kind of what this can do for our health and our mindset. And we have a wonderful guest with us. It is our very first guest here, actually. So we have Justine here, and I will let you introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Justine Capps. I am a board certified holistic nurse and wellness coach, and I own Just Wellness Nurse Coaching.
Awesome. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your business and what nurse coaching is?
Sure. So nurse coaching is very similar to health coaching, except with an RN background. And so we treat the patient and work with the patient holistically. So we're really focused on mind, body awareness, spirituality, rest, how everything is connected, nutrition. So it really touches on everything because we fully believe that the body is an interconnected system and everything works together.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, 100% what we talk about too is just how connected everything is.
Yep. And Justine, I feel like you always go very into the mindset and emotional piece of people's health and just their past history.
Yes. So I am really big on holistic health through the lens of trauma. A lot of times we don't realize how many things are getting stored in our issues, and a lot of our beliefs make, trauma get stored in tissues where we're unable to release those things. And then when we're met with the same experiences over and over, if we continue to respond the same way, it's leading towards a life of chronic illness.
Yeah. So fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly interesting topic, and we'll probably have to have you on to talk more about the trauma aspect of things.
I would love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think so many people don't realize how much that their history can impact them. They're so focused on the symptoms here and now that they forget about how they grew up, their health history growing up, their childhood, anything going, all that can really impact them too. So the body's a pretty incredible thing.
It really is.
For sure. All right. Well, I first want to start off with with the tracking apps and wearables, what are some of the benefits of these things? Why would somebody want to use them?
Sure. I think a lot of people like to use the tracking device because people love data. People love to see kind of what's going on from a data standpoint. And I think, in a way, it's nice. It's nice to see oh my gosh, I'm getting 9 hours of sleep. I had 6 hours of restful sleep. I've taken 12,000 steps today. People like to see that. And then also, it kind of gives them a sense of control. Most of the clients that I see are very much type A, really like to have a sense of control. And unfortunately, in life, there are very few things that we can control, which is why I see more negative things that come from tracking devices versus positive. Some positive things that people have shared with me is, actually reaching out to me and other practitioners, realizing that there was a problem. For instance, the Oura Ring. The Oura Ring is so popular. And the Oura Ring, basically going through stress and sleep and being like, man, I slept great last night, but I'm waking up exhausted. So in a sense, I can see how those tools are pretty cool. But at the same time, our body is the ultimate health tracker. The body is constantly communicating with us. You don't need a watch to tell you to get up and move. Is your back hurting? Like, are you taking deep breaths? Like, are your legs feeling swollen? Like, do your knees hurt? Like, there's so many things that if we don't tune into, that our body is trying to communicate to us, because just like the book goes, the body keeps the score. It is constantly communicating to us. Another area, though, I do see benefits with it is when somebody is trying to get some foundational pieces under wraps, like nutrition, to see how much they're eating or they're not eating. You know, a lot of people I feel like are still in the mindset of counting calories, which isn't my basis of, practice at all. But I want people to think of calories and protein and fats as basically just little beads of energy. So a lot of people, their biggest complaint is not having any energy. And then they realize that they had 50 grams of protein that day. They didn't eat till noon. And so that's another part of it, is really, again, going back to let your body be the tracker. Like, if you're waking up constantly in the middle of the night, maybe it's trying to tell you your blood sugar's low. Maybe you're having a hard time detoxing. There's so many different avenues you can go there. But it is kind of bringing that awareness to the body and trying to get people to connect the dots for them to reach out and work with a practitioner to help there.
Yeah. I had a few points, if that's okay. With the tracking, that last one, before I forget, I like what you said about like beads of energy. So often we think of calorie tracking, people are approaching that with restriction, right? They're like, oh, I have to cut calories. The less I eat, the better. And I know that's not how Caitlin and I practice either, but I really like that like visual of energy, right? But for a lot of my clients too, who have been under eating for so long, whether it be from busy schedule, gut issues, whatever, they don't realize that they're under eating or they just don't have the same hunger. So do you feel like the tracking tools could be helpful in those situations to realize like, hey, you really need to be eating here? Like, give them that like data, that proof that they need to be adding more?
Yeah. So depending on my client's history and, if they have any disordered eating, I don't have them track. But for the basis of my clients, since that's really not the population I'm serving, I do have them track short term.
Yeah.
But I also have them, in all of my notes, very much communicate like this is for awareness for you to get a good base, but I don't give them like hard numbers. Like, I'm not like, I might say like, try to hit 35, aim to get 35 grams of protein in this meal, something like that. But I don't give them numbers. And a lot of them request like macros. Like, they're like, give me a breakdown of exactly what I need to eat. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not a macro coach. That's not what I do. I'm doing this in order for you to see how, when you're fueling your body properly, you have the energy to move on with your day. So I definitely ask all of my clients to track short term and see if they have any benefit. And then they can really see like, oh my gosh, I was eating, so much fat and no protein and too many carbs. Little things here and there to really narrow down where they're not getting energy and why they're not fueling their body properly.
Yeah, I so often have, when I'm having people track, I have them focus on getting like up to a certain number when it comes to protein and fiber, so that we're pushing, like focusing on the good things and not looking at tracking as something that's restrictive.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to obviously the mindset and reasoning behind why you're doing something, for sure. And it can be eye-opening to see where you're at too, but I'm sure this is kind of how you talk about it as well. But when I give people those recommendations, I'm often giving ranges, and it's usually a short-term thing that we're getting at, maybe establishing a baseline. But I always tell them, if you're hungry, like if your body's hungry, it's telling you it needs more, listen to that. Your body overrides what the tracker is telling you. And I think that's exactly what you've been saying, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that, I think too, people want their health to fit in this perfect little box, right? And that would, but really in the holistic space, we're all trying to get away from that, right? Like every body is so different. You don't belong in a rigid, tiny little box. And so it really is a matter of tapping into your intuition and some self-awareness practices to trust your body and to feel safe in your body, because your body is constantly communicating to you. And the problem is, in our world, when we're constantly going, we don't stop and listen.
Yes, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that is a huge disconnect. If we're not taking the time to rest. And that's another thing I feel like majority of my clients struggle with. Resting doesn't mean you're taking a nap on the couch. Resting means you're filling your cup and you're doing something that's bringing you joy, to where your body feels safe, and it can lean into the trust aspect of really trusting your body and knowing you're safe.
Yeah. When you say that too, I always think of like self-care practices. Oftentimes talk about like get a massage, take a bath, like you know, like
Right.
all these pampering things. And while that's great, that can be self-care. It's like, why don't you drink your water today? Why don't you move your
Yeah.
body? Why don't you actually go to bed and get enough sleep? Like that's true self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sleep one, I feel like is so big. Like I hear people say sometimes like, well, my app says that I got 7 hours of sleep last night. And I'm like, how do you feel in the morning? Are you feeling rested? Oh no, I'm exhausted all the time, all day. I can't wait to take a nap or, get back to sleep. But it says I'm getting enough sleep, so something else must be wrong.
And
Yeah.
I see that with stress too. That's another big one that my clients, especially with like the Aura Ring, they'll be like, "Oh, my body loved like the cold plunge, or my body loved this or loved that," and I'm like my, the ring said that my stress was like here, and then I'm like, "Can you feel when you're stressed out?" When I'm stressed out, I be feeling it. I know that I'm stressed out. My body is like really communicating with me because I'm in a state of chaos, and I'm like. And that's like another thing, right? Like, I think it's really great short term to maybe like plug in and check in with yourself and kind of bring that awareness back. But long term, I just see it causing way more stress, way more rigid perfectionism, way more sense of control in a world we have very little control over. I see a lot of like, back in the day, it was like the Fitbit where you could like join competitions. And I mean, I myself was guilty of it. I was in the hospital, like running up flights of stairs, being like, I'm going to beat so and so on your steps. Um, and so kind of getting that too, that like constantly feeling like you have to be on. And a big one too with the Apple Watch, especially, is constantly being connected.
Yes,
Mhm.
I've had to take mine off. I have it sitting
Yeah.
right here because it was like constant. I have all these apps, like circle apps that I'm in memberships and everything. I'm trying to turn off the notifications, but clearly it's not working. So it's just like that constant, like I can't even focus on what I'm doing, right? And so that I know a
Yes.
lot of people have that same thing. It can be a great reminder, like get up and move your body, but so often it's just like this constant reminder of things that we need to be doing. I think that can be added stress.
Absolutely. And then constantly getting those notifications. They're like,
Yeah.
everything feels urgent. Everything
Yes,
feels like,
that's
and
right.
that triggers your body. If everything feels urgent, it needs to get taken care of right now, and everything is constantly just like dinging at you. That is not supportive, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's so hard to focus when you're like, it's like your attention is getting pulled away because then you're just trying to do everything at once, and that just makes you feel chaotic in your brain.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that's a sentiment that so many of my clients feel too, that I can relate to, is like this chaos going on right now, can't focus, especially when trying to go to sleep. So we've kind of touched on this already, I feel like, but what are some of the downsides of tracking apps and wearables? And I think another question that goes along with this is, what are some signs or red flags to look out for when it's time, definitely time to take a break, like space yourself from the apps and really lean into learning to trust your body and listening to the signals it's sending you?
Constantly checking the app, constantly looking at it and checking in versus, again, taking a moment to pause, to
Mm-hmm.
take some deep breaths. Breath work is now, I feel like, starting to come into play with a lot of different things, but just taking a few minutes to really deep breathe brings that awareness back in your body, and it tells you what you need. So if you are taking those deep breaths, and like I said, maybe your lower back hurts, maybe your upper back hurts, your shoulders are tight. Um, checking in that way. And then, instead of just looking at your app to being like, oh, well, I haven't moved in X amount of hours. So I need to get up and move. Like your body is going to tell you what to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I see so many people that like they're trying to hit that like 10,000 steps a day sort of goal. And they'll literally like at night before they're going to bed, like hop on their walking pad and just like watch their app until they hit 10,000 and then they can go get in bed. And I'm like, I wonder if what you actually need right now is to just go and rest and sleep some more. And like, you can get up tomorrow morning and maybe feel a little bit more rested and then keep walking. So I'm like supportive of movement, but like at what cost?
Right. I was totally there. That was totally me once upon a time. Like when I first graduated nursing school and I had that Fitbit, I was like, so laser focused on it. And I would be like, okay, I just need to like walk up the stairs a few more times, or like, I'm going to go for a quick walk down the block, just to hit, it couldn't possibly be 9,950 steps. Like, surely I can get 50 more steps today. And that's another part of it, is if you're constantly noticing that you're feeling stressed and you're feeling triggered and obsessed with meeting these metrics, then that's another sign that you likely need to take a break. If you're choosing, your goals via app versus finding joy, that's another red flag. Like not going out with your friends because you haven't hit something, or not going out to dinner because you have to track certain foods, right? Like, and I see that being a slippery slope too.
Yeah, something that comes to mind when I think about that too is, so like these apps and wearables, they don't recognize that we're human, right? Like each day is going to be different seasons of your life, different times of the month. For women, like your hunger is going to increase and decrease, energy levels fluctuate. And so these apps and wearables don't take that into consideration. And so then when you're relying so much on those apps, like you expect yourself to feel and do the same exact thing, eat the same exact amount of food day in and day out. And that's just not how our body functions or thrives.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, basically it's like we're not machines. And I think that we like to think we are, and we can do all the things. And, like I said, basically like when wellness becomes just like a checklist, like, oh, I did, my castor oil pack today and I went for a walk. When it becomes just a checklist, you're missing the point. You're missing the point of being human, of finding joy. And I think that's kind of where the apps get dangerous too, is very much a rigid perfectionism where you have to do certain things every day, and every day has to look a certain way, versus honoring the body and what it's communicating day to day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What are some things that you feel like people can do to help get them in tune with their body without using any wearables?
A big one is posture. We don't think about posture nearly enough. But right.
I'm slumped down.
I'm intentionally in good posture and have remained in good posture because of this little tidbit. But no, making sure that your shoulders aren't, at your ears and they're rolled back, keeping, an open chest in order to really allow a full breath, feet on the floor, neutral spine, not feeling like you're hunched over, and just really allowing openness throughout. Definitely, tucked pelvis, making sure that your body is in proper alignment, because this is where like chiropractors and body work and all this comes into play, because posture is going to correlate with the nervous system. And so when we have good posture, we're connecting to our nervous system, and we're trying to create that balance and being able to go from fight or flight to rest and digest, and not being stuck in one place or another. And it allows our entire body to connect when we are in good posture. Another one is breath work. It doesn't have to be fancy. I always recommend the box breath because it's quick. This is what Navy SEALs actually use. They coined the box breath to help them basically get in a state of action versus just sitting still. It gets you kind of grounded, gets you aware and then allows you to move forward with your day.
I love all that. I know we're almost at time here, and this might be a topic that we bring up with like the trauma conversation later on, but I've come across this several times. So I'm really curious to hear how you address this or how you support clients who are like this. I know we all do HTMA testing. So we haven't really talked about that today, but it's mineral testing, and that can give us a lot of insight into the body's stress level and everything. But I have a lot of clients who I'm trying to talk to them about their nervous system. Oftentimes we even have a clear picture of what's going on internally and how stress is impacting them. But they're like, I can't slow down. I can't stop. And they're still not recognizing that stress is a concern. They're like, this is just how I've always been. I'm just like a go, go, go kind of person. I'm like, okay, but clearly your body's not loving that.
Yes. And that I think is a big part of coaching too, is basically being like, right. And we're working together because that is not serving you. That go, go,
Exactly.
go lifestyle is not serving you anymore. And just because it's all that's, all you've known and that's who you've been your whole life, you have to be open to changing that and rewiring the way you're thinking and rewiring what safety means in your body in order to move forward. And that's one of the biggest things that I stress on is, the very first time I meet clients is like, how much work are you willing to put in? And are you open to making these changes? I can't make them for you. And it's okay if you're not open to making these changes, but I'm not the right person to work with because certain things need to be implemented in order for you to feel better. It's so much more than a supplement. It's so much more than, just nutrition. Everything plays a role. So are you willing to change and make the extra step and actually make this be transformational?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what you were saying about if wellness becomes just like a checkbox. And that's also applicable to the tracking apps and wearables. Like if we are relying on those, like, oh, I'm tracking my food, I'm getting my 10,000 steps, and I'm checking all these boxes, but nothing seems to be changing, that can be really frustrating. But then it does come back to like, well, you need to put in the true work of making actual change here. We can't just check off these boxes, right? We need to show up how our body's needing it and what it's asking for.
Yes. And that's a big one too, when it does go to like just checking boxes, going into worth, being like, are you only worthy if these get checked off? Right. So this is again where like the deepness of coaching comes into play, where it's like you hitting these things doesn't make you any more worthy than if you skipped your your exercise today. And so that's where coaching and really looking through the lens of trauma goes deeper. It goes a lot deeper.
Yeah, I'd say nutrition in general, health in general goes a lot deeper than people think. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask? Again, I'm sure we could continue this conversation for hours, but Caitlin, is there any other question that you wanted to ask?
No, all of my other questions I think would like start to deep dive us into into some other rabbit holes. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time for that today.
Well, Justine, I'd love to ask you, what's one tip? I feel like you already gave a ton of fantastic information here for our listeners, but what is one tip that you want to leave them with, thinking like, I'd prefer you focus here, and yeah, I guess one tip to get in more in tune with your body.
Sure. Check in with yourself multiple times a day. I don't want to say, do it on the hour every hour, but check in with yourself when things start to surface, any type of emotions, any feeling of overwhelm, decreased concentration. Anytime you're feeling a little bit depleted, check in with yourself. And maybe it is checking your posture. Maybe it is taking a few deep breaths. Maybe it is grabbing something to eat. Check in with yourself multiple times a day, especially when you start to feel totally chaotic. I think that's a big one, is like when you start to feel chaotic, when you start to feel depleted or fatigued, what could be causing that and how can you support yourself best?
Yeah, thank you. I love that. And where can people find you?
Sure. So justwellnessnursecoaching.com is my website and has all my services there. And then my Instagram is Holistic Boundaries.
Great. Thank you so much. We will leave that information in the show notes. And of course,
Awesome.
if you
Thank you.
ever want to reach out to Caitlin and I as well, we will put our Instagram handles and websites in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for coming, Justine.
Thanks for having me, guys.